we thrive off nerd culture. I don't really know how else to put it. We could put other labels on it. It's probably not nerd culture now because it's so mainstream, but we go to fairly deep level of Star Wars and stuff. You like Star Wars, I like Star Wars. I want to pick your brains a bit, but I want to pick your brains a bit about your general feelings of... Let's go with Star Wars at the moment. I think that's a good start. We both grew up on it. Like, I love it. Or, you know, we like Star Wars a lot. You made me watch that. I think it's the episode 1 review, the Plinkett or whatever is, you know, that.
You might not have seen it, but your brain did.
That was clever. So I just want to pick your brains really about... I mean, there's a lot. I'm sure you want to talk about a lot about it, but what do you think about? Maybe we'll just start with the. What did you think, Bloor, when Disney took over or they sold it to Disney? What were your genuine thoughts? Was it despair, panic? Were you excited? Like, what's the deal?
At the time, I don't think I really understood the implications. From the point of I didn't expect any more movies. I thought it was done and dusted. I thought they were literally just buying the right to make toys.
Sure.
For, like, the old stuff.
Yeah.
It's probably naive at me at the time, but, you know, that was nearly 10 years ago, so...
No, I can see where you come from in that, because I think the idea of any more Star Wars films was just so out of the realm of possibility at that point.
Well, yeah, like, you know, the prequels had been utterly obliterated by critics en masse. I mean, if you look at them from the standpoint of what generally makes for a good movie, it's mostly justified.
Yeah. I will just put this out there now, Bloor, just to get out of the way.
Yeah.
I grew up on the prequels. I don't think that I can watch them and enjoy them for what they are. I think they have much more of an identity than the new films in terms of... You look at Padme Amidala's outfits, they're so unique. You look at all the planets, they're different, they're new. The politics stuff, like whatever, but Palpatine is really interesting. I could go on, but I enjoy those films. I grew up on them. I don't have any problem. Really, like, I found Jar Jar Binks funny because I was a kid. Like, it's how that is the truth. So you're not much more older than me. I mean, you grew up on them as well. Do you have very different opinions now that you've gotten older? Did you like them before? You don't now?
We're talking about the prequels at large.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I enjoy them.
Mm-hmm.
I think every piece of artistic criticism that's levied at them is pretty much correct. Now that I've kind of grown up and learnt critical thinking, the rational part of my brain goes, who the fuck wrote this? Who the fuck thought I don't like sand was going to be like a genuine pivotal line in the saga? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, the irrational part of my brain is like, lightsabers, Star Wars, Vader,
Jewel of the Fates.
Palpatine. So, you know, kind of a bit both. You know, the prequels get a free pass for the same reason I buy EA's Battlefront, and that is Star Wars has its dick firmly lodged in my wallet. And it's never coming out.
At all times?
It never pulls out, Nick.
Okay.
It's just currently splooging all over my debit card.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I know I think you're big on both of the new Battlefront games, and I love the first two, but I've got to say I was really, I think disappointed is an understatement for that first EA Battlefront game, and I've just got the second one because it was free on PS Plus, and I think it's a really good game after 3 years of updating it, which is a shame because it's taken them essentially 5 years, 6 years to make a good Battlefront game, in my opinion. Maybe you disagree with that?
It depends how you're defining good game, whether you just kind of want an overall sort of assessment of it, if you want to break it down to its raw components. So the 2015 one I didn't buy, at least not straight away. I think I eventually picked it up in like CEX or something for like 10 quid.
Sure.
And the reason for that is I boycotted EA the first time they introduced Ultimate Team. Because even what was it, FIFA 09 or whatever, when they started bringing that shit in, I saw the writing on the wall and was like, nah. Nah. Fuck this pay to win trading card shit. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. Because they were like,
What,
yeah,
so
FIFA 10 is like just around the corner. It's like, hang on, you're telling me I spend all this money on card packs, or technically you can unlock them through gameplay.
Yeah.
I'm going to spend all this time and or money unlocking all this shit, and it's going to be completely fucking useless in 12 months. Go fuck yourself.
So was that you saying no to every EA game at that point, or just FIFA, or?
I boycotted EA for the best part of 5 or 6 years.
Apart from Mass Effect 3, or even that?
I've not finished Mass Effect 3 yet. I've only just picked it up on... I think I did buy it on Origin a few months back, but I've still yet to play through it. It's just such a fucking drag.
Interesting.
Anyway, we can come back to Mass Effect because that's an entirely different clusterfuck. 2015 rolls around. There's these trailers for Battlefront or whatever. I'm like, well, if push came to shove, I'd compromise my principles for Star Wars. End of the day. Immediately. Without a second. If the game is any fucking good. So this shit comes out with the, $60, 50 quid price tag at launch, or you can get the deluxe edition that gets you, I think, the DL44 or whatever Han's blaster is.
Yeah,
you get that immediately if you buy the deluxe edition. So you pay an extra £10 to get the best gun in the game immediately. Pay to win. Or you could get the ultimate edition, which was like 50 quid more and came with a season pass.
I didn't even know that game had a season pass.
The first one had the season pass, so this was one of the main controversies at the time because the first game had fuck all content at launch. Yeah,
and that's why I hated it. Well, yeah, I hated it.
It had 4 maps. They were reused assets from each map for every different game mode, but when you break it down, it's 4 maps. 3 heroes for each side, heroes and villains. And no campaign. No campaign, no real single player mode to speak of other than fight horde of fucking bots. Horde mode.
Kind of and then I think there was basically maybe a couple of modes and then the Starfighter mode. Yeah. Maybe. I can't even remember that.
Whereas if that game had came out and was 30, maybe 20 quid.
£20.
20 quid. Pay us another 20 quid and you get all the DLC for the next 2 years. All right. Yeah, I can live with that. To charge full retail for half a fucking game, you can go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
So I did eventually pick the game up because it was like a tenner in CEX, and I was like, well, we'll see what it's like. Enjoyed the gameplay, enjoyed the content, what little of it there was. Then the DLC started coming around, and people were quite hyped about that. I didn't bother with any of it. I think I got the free Jakku map when that came out.
Right, I remember that. Cool map.
Yeah, it's fine. It's just rolling desert filled with clutter. But that's what Jakku's meant to be, isn't it? So it's
with destroyed starships. I mean, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, destroyed starships that you can't do anything interaction wise.
That's true.
So, and the fucking starship mode was a joke.
As in the fight in a spaceship.
Yeah, there's a fighter squadron or whatever the fucking mode was. That was shit.
Yeah, I remember that being
bad. But I was like, this isn't bad as a foundation. The
graphics were amazing, the sound design was good, and the gameplay was solid. It was just there was nothing there.
Yeah, basically. I mean, they didn't really probably have to do too much with the graphics. The fucking Frostbite engine makes itself. You know what I mean? So they flash forward, I think, about 2 years to E3, and the big reveal comes for Battlefront 2. And they're like, New campaign mode. You get to play as the Empire. No season pass. All DLC is free. Multiple eras. Like, okay, you're speaking my language now. So I broke 2 of my fucking tenants, Nick. So I was suckered in immediately by this fucking horseshit, right?
Okay.
So not only did I buy the game, I pre-ordered it.
Jesus. Was there any particular reason for the pre-order?
I think I'd bought into the hype, not only for Battlefront 2, but for The Last Jedi.
I remember speaking about, not to detract from your, the points we're making on Battlefront here, but I remember you quite vividly thought The Force Awakens had not only met an insurmountable amount of hype, but that it probably, if anything, slightly, over-delivered on perhaps our expectations coming off the prequels, etc. And that Rogue One, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the best Star Wars films. So then we're going into Episode 8, and Battlefront 2 is about to come out, so now you're kind of thinking, this could all be lining up quite well.
Yeah, my bubble was yet to pop.
Okay.
This is the biggest my bubble got before it exploded everywhere.
Okay.
And now there's just a hot mess on the floor.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough of my weird analogies.
Yeah, go on.
So then we're like in the lead up to the release, right? I've booked 2 days off work to play the fucking thing on launch day.
Incredible, mate.
Just to go, that. Right, I don't want to be disturbed by anyone. I don't care about leveling up online or any of that shit. I just want to sit back for 2 days and just immerse myself in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
So a week prior to launch, they do this thing where if you've got the EA Origin access on PC, you can play the game for a certain amount of time in the week leading up to launch. And that was when the dam broke.
Okay.
Because you see, I think DICE turned around and said, what killed the first game? This is me speculating completely, because
I was going to ask you about this anyway.
No one's come out and said anything, but if you read between the lines and pay attention to these things with a stupid amount of scrutiny the way I do, reading between the lines, it seems like DICE went to EA and said the thing that killed the first game was the season pass. People did not want to pay £50 to get half the game. So if we're doing another one, we ain't going to do that. And the trade-off, I bet you anything, the trade-off they came back with was the loot boxes. So, all right, well, if you're not going to monetize it that way, we still need to make our money. And they've said repeatedly over the year, Andrew fucking Wilson, the CEO of EA, has said multiple times that the games as a live service, which is a fucking phrase I abhor,
a game being online. Yeah, carry on. Yeah.
No, that's not what they mean, is it, though?
No, I know.
They mean we're going to release a game to charge people through the nose for shit that should be available in the game immediately until the end of time. But they've already said that, we want to bring that from the sports games into everything else as well. So it started, I think it may have started to creep into Andromeda in the multiplayer. I've never picked up Andromeda or given it a second glance, apart from laughing at the memes when it first came out.
I gotta be honest, mate, I forgot I had multiplayer, to be honest.
I think there were crates in that.
Okay.
So they brought them to Star Wars. And the pushback was unlike anything I've ever seen in terms of the internet mobilizing to say, fuck you, no. The line must be drawn here and no further. Do you know what I mean?
But this feedback that the internet, i.e. individuals on the internet, give EA, DICE, they all... Okay, it probably sold really quite well, as did the first game anyway. So, to a certain extent, they could have ignored that, right? In terms of from a finance point of view, maybe from not a longevity. If you want to keep selling Star Wars games, you're gonna have to stop this, because I guess people won't buy it, even though people still buy FIFA every year, etc.
The only way you get to EA is through their wallet. So the reason it all kicked off, the Franz Ferdinand, if you will, of Battlefront 2's demise, was someone had played in this open access, early access thing.
Yeah.
Played however many matches and averaged how many credits they were earning per battle. He'd then averaged how many credits you'd get from opening crates, etc., as you progressed. And he worked out that in order to play as Darth Vader,
I remember this,
or Luke, you would have to either grind for the equivalent of 40 hours of gameplay or pay for the equivalent of $80 worth of loot crates. Now, you can sit there and say, rough. My game's not pay to win. They're not locked behind a paywall because you can play the game and unlock them. Who the fuck has 40 hours to grind for not one but two characters each? Not to mention Leia behind a paywall. I think Chewie might have been behind a paywall.
I got to be honest with you, mate.
Fucking Palpatine.
Again, I forgot that all... Well, I didn't forget that. But I forgot that most of the heroes were behind a paywall because of the state the game's in now. But, I won't talk about that yet. But
you might have forgotten about it, but your brain didn't.
It's I've underestimated perhaps how far this game has come. But anyway, let's continue.
So, what could have been, I think, the crowning achievement of Star Wars entertainment for years to come was scuppered right out of the gate by bad corporate decision making and corporate greed. Because if you'd given me a game like that with a proper progression system and sustained reasonable updates, which they eventually got into more or less, it wasn't great, but it was reasonable.
Here's a free map, here's a free hero, Here's
the next map and heroes, blah, blah, blah. And we were getting seasonal updates like the Clone Wars stuff was great.
100%.
I remember thinking, this is like being back at launch. I'm flying into lobbies straight out of the menu sort of thing because there's so many people playing this. You could have had one hell of a game on your hands. And the way you monetize that is skins, which they started doing towards the end. But by then it was too late. So much bad taste in people's mouth from the start of it. The first, I think, 6 months after the game released, there was pretty much nothing. We got the Last Jedi add-on, which was ready to go when the game launched, and that just kind of released, I think, in conjunction with the film. They added Finn and Phasma and a map that, for all intents and purposes, were on the disc. You didn't really get anything for the first 6 months while they fixed the progression system because of the fucking backlash and the fact I think the fucking governor of Hawaii turned around and said, I'm looking into this because this is some shady shit. Why is there a glorified casino in my kid's Star Wars game? This might need to be brought to the Congress. Do you know what I mean?
Is that was that a female? I've heard, I think she ran for president, if I'm not, it could be a different governor.
It's not the dude I'm thinking of.
Oh, okay.
Not that I'm assuming his gender. He, obviously, whatever they were doing scared the shit out of them because on launch day they removed the ability to buy things in-game. And they also halved the amount of credits you needed to get all of the characters. So, what were we left with? Well, the characters were quicker to unlock. They still took too fucking long, but they were quicker. You can't buy crates anymore, so you can't accelerate your progression with money.
On launch?
On launch day, they removed the ability to buy crystals, which is their in-game currency to buy shit. They then... So you can't pay to accelerate your progression anymore. But you also can't progress what you want. There's no leveling things up, per se. You get crafting parts from crates. which when you accumulate a sufficient amount, you can either make a card or upgrade it. But they are few and far between, Nick. We're talking I've got to play the best part of 10 matches in a row to get enough credits to buy a crate. And the matches are not short. I'm talking the fucking Galactic Conquest mode where one match can take anything from 15 minutes to half an hour.
Well, the Supremacy mode that I've played, I don't know if that was there when you were playing, when this was happening.
Oh, mate, I still fucking play this shit on a daily basis. So, it's all a moot point. It's all, in aid of me still playing this steaming pile of a game. But,
sure,
I have fun and it's got lightsabers and I'm powerless.
So they were changing everything. Eventually, it got to where it is now, which is the game I'm playing, where all the heroes are unlocked. There's skins you can unlock. There are the game modes I thought were fantastic. Like when we played the Galactic Conquest one, we were the droids invading Camino, so it was droids versus clones, and like the droid dropship had fired what looked like robot tentacle drills on the roof of the. I was like, this is incredible. And everything's looking beautiful. The rain's shining off the roof. The clone, the inside looks incredible, etc. And again, I think that relates back to my point of the episodes 1 to 3 have a strong sense of identity because of these planets, etc. And I've got to say, mate, I haven't had this much fun on a multiplayer game in a long time. Coming from my point of view from playing this game recently.
It's in stark contrast to the first one. The first one I was kind of like, where's my space battles? Where's my this? Where's my that? Campaign, please. Okay, thanks, bye.
Did you play the Battlefront 2 campaign?
Yeah.
Did you like it?
No.
No.
I liked the start of it. I liked the trailer for it. It's just a shame that what we got wasn't in any way what the trailer made it out to be. Play as the Empire for 3 fucking missions. 3 fucking missions. And literally, not 2 levels later, Leia's shaking your hand and going, "You're the reason hope exists in the galaxy." It's like, bitch, please, I used to be Special Forces.
Mate, I said before even that game came out, I was like, "You're going to turn good." It's just the way it's going to go. You can just tell. Writing's on the wall.
People don't actually mention this in any of the videos I've watched and stuff. In the trailer, there was a scene of Iden, the protagonist, on a platform in front of First Order soldiers. First Order, not Empire.
Okay.
Going, "Hope cannot save them," in her Imperial uniform. So the implication being the campaign would take you into the sequel era.
Yeah.
And you would be fighting with the First Order. Now, the expansion, the DLC that came with The Last Jedi, did take you into that era, but by then you were already rebel scum.
Is that when she's old and grey and stuff?
You've got save your daughter and shit and whatever.
Was it a justifiable DLC? I don't even know how much it was. Was it free?
All the DLC for the game is free, Nick.
Oh, impressive. Okay.
So long as you buy loot crates.
So...
And we're not having the loot crates anymore.
Have you played the game consistently since it launched then?
I'd say so, yeah. There's been maybe 1 or 2 months where I don't play it because it got stale. And then they'd go, "We're about to drop Obi-Wan." And I'd be like, "Shut up and take my money."
My crystals. So, do you still play it now a bit?
Yeah. I'm trying to get that fucking Old Master skin for Maul.
Oh, yeah, that's so cool. And the Grievous one, that's cool as well.
The Grievous one I've already got because I just grind for that shit, baby.
Fair. So let's maybe move on to the sequels, Bloor. I think...
Hang on, I think I need a cigarette first. I need to get my blood pressure back down to normal before I give myself a coronary.
You tried the Old Republic, the MMO, for a bit, didn't you? I think.
I am currently subscribed to it.
Oh, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the whole game, really. But yeah,
Have you ever played World of Warcraft?
Yes, mate. You turned me onto it for about 2 months and lost my life.
Have you ever played World of Warcraft and thought this could use more lightsabers?
Yes.
then you probably will enjoy The Old Republic.
Okay.
It's also got
Go
like
on.
branching dialogue the way sort of like Mass Effect does. It's not really got as many implications on the story as far as I can tell, but yeah, it's fun.
What's the updates and what would you call them, expansion roadmap been like for that game? I'm surprised that Disney have kept it going, to be honest with you, considering their stance and EA's stances on video games, but I guess BioWare's owned by EA, so that makes sense. But yeah, what do you think of the expansion roadmap for that game? Have they released a lot for it? I don't even know.
There's been a fair few expansions over the years. I don't know if it really has a roadmap going forwards, because I know Disney threw the cannon in the bin, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, this game came out pre-Disney.
Yeah.
So what kind of lifespan or longevity it's got going forwards, I don't really know.
Did you have any strong feelings when Disney made that decision about cancelling the EU?
Yeah, no. Some of the stories were quite cool. Like, as I've kind of explored them over the years, there's a lot of good shit in there. And I kind of get why people were so butthurt at the time when it was just kind of thrown out like yesterday's dinner.
So you've explored these old stories even when they're not canon anymore, out of curiosity and...
Yeah, some of them, yeah. Like someone told me that Palpatine comes back from the dead and can summon force storms and stuff. I'm like, that sounds crazy. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, it's all right.
Is that the Dark... I can't remember what it's called now.
Dark Empire or Heir to the Empire? I can't remember.
Dark Empire trilogy. I read a comic book from like the library, and I was like, "This is the coolest Star Wars thing I've ever read." Like it has the Palpatine clone stuff in it. Luke goes to the dark side, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Super cool.
At the same time, though, the expanded lore for Star Wars that's been sort of trickling out over the years since the Disney takeover, I think, has been better than any of the films. No,
that Disney have done.
It's even better than the prequels.
Really? Okay.
Like,
so I mean that.
I don't.
Before we go on to the sorry, go on, mate.
So I was just going to say, I don't want to spoil anything for you that you might watch, but there is one episode in Rebels that legit made me want to cry. Just because the way the scene was set up, the various characters' arcs leading up to that moment, and the dialogue, all of it, as well as the soundtrack, the music and stuff, was all just perfect. Just spot on.
I watched the first 2 seasons of Rebels, I believe, and respected it a lot. I liked it, but it wasn't quite gripping me enough.
See,
like the Clone Wars was.
The thing with the Clone Wars, and to a greater extent, I think Rebels, I don't know if this is deliberate to get the networks to sign on to it or something. The first seasons are very kiddie. Certainly the first few episodes. But the longer they seem to stay around, the more, not necessarily darker, but they're dealing with themes that a child wouldn't really be able to appreciate.
Yeah.
So, you know, like Maul's entire arc, for example, and the implications of it and the resolution of it in Rebels, don't think you could really comprehend as a kid. I can't really say too much without spoiling it for you.
No, it's okay.
If you've not watched the season finale of Rebels for season 2,
I think I did.
I'd
if I'm not
start
mistaken.
there. Well, that's where Maul gets reintroduced into Rebels.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's the episode that had me blubbing.
Okay, because of the confrontation with Ahsoka and...
Yep.
Okay. Maybe we can talk about this after we've discussed the films, but my feelings about Star Wars at the moment, mate, and I'm going to sound like a 1977 fan. I just don't feel that much for it anymore. I feel probably like how millions of people felt after the prequels had finished their run at the moment, to be honest with you.
Hashtag not my Star Wars.
I don't really care that they might do more films. I like the game. I mean, Jedi Fallen Order, I think, was probably one of the best Star Wars games released. What are your thoughts on that?
So the what was the best ever released?
Jedi Fallen Order.
I mean, it was fucking good. I remember it's been a while since I've played it, and it's not what I've come back to. I've kind of gone, right, I've played that. Done with that story.
Put it on the shelf, 100%.
Worth
mate.
my price of admission. I'll play it again in a few years' time, and I'm happy with that because it kept me entertained for hours. Game-wise, enjoyed the combat. Very Dark Soulsy. It was a Dark Souls game that I didn't suck at, so that was a refreshing change.
That's what I loved about it, mate. It was like Dark Souls but playable to me. You know,
I mean, Dark Souls is playable, but you have to kind of go in with the expectation I'm going to die a lot. Whereas this one, I can just set it to story mode and go, I am here for the story. End of bye. Combat was still entertaining. You know, picking up stormtroopers and flinging them off ledges. That's what you want in a Star Wars game.
that deflecting that first laser bolt from a stormtrooper was unbelievable to me. You know, like just the way it felt, and you just saw the bolt deflect. I don't know, man, and the timing and everything. I thought was great.
Story was good. I don't really know where you could take it from there.
I'm sure they will take it somewhere.
I'm not really overly invested in any of the characters moving forwards. It was a nice little self-contained story. I don't really feel any impetus to turn it into a franchise. I wouldn't mind another game using the same engine and mechanics set in a different time period that tells a different story. But I'm not wanting the Cal trilogy, if you know what I mean.
I think they will probably do the Cal trilogy, but I think your idea sounds way more interesting. I mean, imagine, I know we pretty much get this in the Clone Wars series, but imagine being able to play through the Clone Wars in that kind of game in those game mechanics. That'd be super cool. So kind of going to the inevitable sequel trilogy then, Bloor.
Yeah, you've said this three times and we've digressed every time.
I know. We've discussed Force Awakens. I think you like Rogue One as well as me.
I like the second half of Rogue One.
Okay.
First half, I'm just like, I don't care. Get on with it.
To digress for a fourth time, how good is that Fallen Order like ending, if you will?
You've played it, right?
Yeah.
Well,
completed it.
I'm about to spoil it, so you might want to edit this out, but that's up to you.
Sure.
It was a better Vader scene than Rogue One.
I like
So
that a lot.
it had dialogue, so I had a reason to give a shit, because there was like context. It wasn't just, here's some mindless violence to give fanboys an erection.
It worked. I had an erection the whole time. In both. Let's see if we can reach there. So, Rogue One comes out. You like Rogue One. Things are starting to look promising for Star Wars, I'd say. We have hope for the first time, perhaps in years, I guess.
Rogue One is its own thing. That's got nothing to do with how I feel about The Last Jedi and the rise of shit.
I'm so glad you said that. So, yeah, I mean, The Last Jedi comes out. I liked some of the bold things it did with the franchise, but for the most part, I guess everyone hates it.
What did it do that was bold?
The throne room scene.
What was bold about that?
Fight scene. We saw good and evil battle with each other again for the first time, and I love the choreography.
You like the choreography in that film? In that fight scene?
Yeah, 100%.
Interesting.
That's Bloor's way of saying, you fucking idiot.
I don't. Well, I'm trying not to sound condescending and failing miserably, but
no.
Say that
mate.
That particular fight scene has now been ruined for me, because if you actually analyze it in slow motion, it's horrendous.
Is it?
There's one point where two guys clash their sticks into each other for no apparent reason. They're just completely swinging ride of Rey the entire time. She's not even in the space they're swinging at, and they just kind of clang blades together for no reason. There's one guy who gets her in a chokehold, and they edited out one of his weapons in his offhand in post, because if he had it there'd be no reason for him to not stab her in the head. It's just gone.
Right.
Just added it out completely. You just literally go on YouTube and type in Last Jedi fight scene, something like that.
And these edits, they're not typical of other Star Wars fight scenes.
No.
Interesting.
But you've never really had a fight scene on that scale with that many people before, and there's probably a reason for that. Is that the choreographers aren't really up to the job.
The other main aspect which I like about the film is that it fails but tries to solve the inevitable issue of the force was balanced. Why is any of this happening? And it's like, no, we're going beyond old concepts of evil and good, even though actually they are exactly the same concepts in the end. But we're trying to go beyond the past, let go of the past, move on to the future. And I like the idea of that kid at the end with the broom. And, you know, you don't need to be a Skywalker or a Palpatine or someone of this family to be an important aspect of Star Wars. Like, the next great Luke Skywalker could be around the corner sweeping floors.
I mean, it's a nice idea. It's a problem that it contradicts everything that's come before.
Sure. I kind of like the boldness of that, though.
But it's not bold if it's dumb. You know what I mean? If it's internally inconsistent, that's not bold. That's just stupid. You've made it so that there's no longer a continuous story. If it's no longer a continuous story, it's not a continuation of the story I'm coming to see, which means I don't care anymore.
Let me be very clear. I think it's probably one of, if not the biggest failing Disney has ever done, to not design a trilogy story arc for a new Star Wars trilogy.
I think that's possibly the fundamental problem of the last two films. The Force Awakens was everything it needed to be. It was a safe, soft retelling of A New Hope.
Soft is putting it lightly, I think.
Beat for beat, it's the same story, but they're not overtly the same characters doing the same thing with the same terminology. So soft retelling in that respect. It did that, but it introduced and established three new main characters, Rey, Finn, Poe, and left it on a note where they were to be the centre of attention going forwards. They were, for the most part, likeable.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think you really saw enough of Poe to get to grips with him in the second half.
I agree.
And I think some of that may have ended up on the cutting room floor. But, you know, I was interested to see what they did with Finn.
Quick question for you on The Force Awakens. I personally feel like it's a huge opportunity wasted that we didn't at least get a shot with all three of the old legacy. Maybe you don't feel the need for that, but I felt that it was an absolute waste of opportunity.
I think you either needed to have it or show on screen the ramifications of not having it.
Which they didn't.
No.
Oh, mate. Let's not even go there with that stuff. Like, have you seen the deleted scenes for The Last Jedi? Because they have the scene
where Luke's
like hands, die. I'm like, how could you possibly not put that in the film?
Because we need to make more time for Admiral Pinkhair, because whamming.
Yeah, sorry, I'm cutting you off. So
it's all right. We're going to be here for the next 3 hours while I pick apart The Last Jedi for you.
So you were saying about The Force Awakens, soft retelling, does the job.
Yeah. It sets everything up that it needs to for a trilogy and has a classic J.J. Abrams mystery box. Have you seen the mystery box video?
TED Talk.
So,
yeah.
The problem...
By the way, that philosophy just doesn't... It works, but not for like a sequel, if that makes sense, because at some point you're going to have to open the box, right?
Yeah, it works fine, so long as J.J. Abrams is making a trilogy and not one film to be handed off to some guy.
Yeah.
The first time I watched The Last Jedi, I was just baffled. I was like, I'm going to be paraphrasing Red Letter Media here because pretty much everything they describe in their review was what I was experiencing at the time. I was like, I'm having a bad dream where I went to see Star Wars and it was rubbish, and I'm going to wake up tomorrow and go see the actual film.
You were, in a bad way, you were speechless almost.
I think I was in disbelief. I was waiting for the curtain to lift up and go, surprise, this was a practical joke, and, we're not all fucking stupid.
Who's the real film? Empire Strikes Back 2.0. No, I'll joke. Carry on. So
you've got the J.J. Abrams mystery box, and Rian Johnson decided to open the mystery box and take a big old shit in it. Just to be a contrarian. because the
I'm not.
the biggest thing that almost became a meme really was this idea of subverting expectations. You know, it's a fantastic film. It subverted my expectations. Nick, if I walk
In terms of things happened that you didn't expect.
yeah, you know,
Okay.
what you think Snoke is fucking Plagueis? You think Rey is a Kenobi? None of these things matter. The first film was designed from the ground up to make you think these things mattered, but the sequel is just going to pretend they don't. Only for the third film to turn around and go, oh yeah, surprise, actually they do matter. There's the crux of the story going forwards. But anyway, I digress. We'll leave the Rise of Skywalker for later.
We'll get to that, don't worry.
So,
Don't worry.
hang on, I've lost my train of thought.
Well, why do you get your train of
Oh yeah, subverting
thought?
expectations, right? So,
Yeah.
if I walk into you, if you ask for a cup of coffee, right, I'll bring you a cup. You drink it, and it's piss, right? Do you go, thank you, Bloor, for subverting my expectations?
Okay.
I appreciate the creativity.
A counter analogy, and my analogies are worse than yours. I ring you up and I say, Bloor, can you join me for a walk? And you go, yeah, okay. So I turn up to your house in the car, and I'm like, oh, surprise, we're going to a Metallica concert. Now, you know, you can say you don't like, let's just pretend that, you know, that would be a case which would be better than going for a walk. That's also subverting expectations, isn't
Your
it?
analogy only works if I've been telling you for the last 3 years that I'm desperate to go to see Beyonce.
Okay.
If you turn up on my doorstep and say, we're going to see Metallica, I'll be like, I don't like Metallica. All right, then,
I like
part
Beyonce.
ways. And that's kind of what happened with The Last Jedi.
Interesting.
It was the Beyonce to my Metallica.
When you think about these films, Bloor, and like you have all these thoughts on them, and you like going into critical detail and things like that.
Sure.
Do you ever question why you care about these films? And I don't mean this in a negative way. We all need things to care about, and I think it's good to be passionate about things. Do you think why do I care this much about this? Obviously, there's a large context. I like Star Wars. I like this new trilogy. But do you ever think, oh, you know what? All of this critical thinking for this, you know, piece of entertainment. Why? Why do it? Why embellish in it? Why comment on it?
I think it probably tickles the same parts of my brain that the Bible does for a Christian. Except I have a somewhat healthy awareness that it's not real.
Sure.
I do not believe that Luke Skywalker literally blew up the Death Star.
So can you elaborate on that a little bit in terms of the Bible analogy? You just
Well, A, it's entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
B, I like to populate my room with lots of paraphernalia associated with it. You know, you could compare my Star Wars shrine to a religious altar.
Sure.
I think there are interesting, well, certainly in terms of the original trilogy and to a lesser extent the prequels, I think there's certain wisdoms that you can take away from them and apply to real life.
I like that.
Certain abstract lessons. You know, what was the main lesson from the original trilogy, do you think, as an overall arc?
I mean, I'd say redemption. I've got to say, I think it's all about Darth Vader's redemption and how Luke helps him with that. But then you could argue about Luke becoming a hero, I guess. I mean, I'd say redemption, personally.
I think that's some of what you could take away from it. I think Luke's arc, particularly in Return of the Jedi, is a lot more interesting in the respect of what he's been trained to do by Ben and Yoda compared to what he ends up doing. You know, they're telling him he has to go there, he has to kill Vader, or he'll never be a Jedi. He'll never destroy the Emperor unless he faces Vader. But his decision is that you can defeat an enemy by means other than mindless violence. You know, it's not just about saving his father. Of course, that is a driving force, undoubtedly, but it's more this blind adherence to Darkseid bad. Kill Darkseid. Well, if you're just going to kill that which you don't agree with, how are you any better than the Emperor? So, you know.
Yeah.
Hey.
No, good point, mate. It's funny you say that, mate, because I literally watched Return of the Jedi like yesterday, and for whatever reason, just showing India. And
She'd never seen it before.
no, never saw Empire either. Thoroughly enjoyed that. She did thoroughly.
Do you know what Empire did?
Go on.
Subverted my expectations without taking a shit in my mouth.
I do think after watching Empire, it is the best one. I think a lot of the points you make, Bloor, are really interesting. And I would actually say for me, rewatching it, Return of the Jedi might be the weakest, but it also has, of the original trilogy, but it also has the strongest moments of Darth Vader being revealed and redeemed, sorry. But to be honest with you, Bloor, looking at it, when his redemption arc really only starts, let's say max at the end of Empire Strikes Back, at the reveal, a similar downfall happens in episode 3, and everyone hates that moment. But like rewatching Return of the Jedi, I think Darth Vader coming back from the dark side is still pretty out of nowhere, to be honest, from what I saw.
I think it's worse in the context of the prequels.
Okay.
Because he's gone from this faceless guy who's made some questionable life choices and ultimately chooses to do the right thing to a man who literally murdered defenseless children because he was tricked by the monster mash.
But he was desperate to save his love of his life.
He had little to no reason to believe that would work.
That's true.
He took
Sand.
Took the words of the man who literally engineered a galactic war for the last 3 years, played both sides against each other, been duplicitous in the entire thing, clearly to benefit his own agenda, and this stupid fucking emo takes everything he says at face value. Why? Because they put me on the council and wouldn't give me the rank of master. I hate them. They're like animals.
Take a seat, young Skywalker.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, okay.
At least we have the prequel memes. We were ranting and raving about The Last Jedi, and you distracted me again, Nick.
I like it.
Again.
So, so I asked you about, and I enjoy us talking deeply about such
trivial films for children.
Exactly. But do you think there's an aspect of our discussion where you think, George Lucas might turn around and be like, well, you fucking write the Star Wars then,
I am.
And an element... go on.
I am.
What, writing Star Wars?
I'm going to rewrite the sequel trilogy and run it as a D&D campaign.
I want to play this campaign.
We'll have to move back to Norwich.
I'll come down for the weekend.
Every weekend?
No, it's not happening. How long is each campaign, do you think, like, from the way you're designing it?
Depends how many times the party go in completely the wrong direction and for how long.
Fair.
It's like, hey guys, look, the fucking plot you want to resolve is over that way. They're like, oh, but shiny thing.
Lightsaber?
Yeah.
Okay. Kyber crystal. Okay.
I could fucking do another 3-hour segment on D&D. I play too much D&D and I fucking love it.
I can respect that because it's an inventive game. Do you prefer being the dungeon master?
Sometimes I convince myself I do. Okay. I like the creativity that you can put into it, but the running of it is hard work sometimes. The problem
in the creation of the story, or just the general as you're playing.
Both. Recently, I was at the point where I was getting ready to run 3 games a week. So these are 3 different groups playing 3 different campaigns on 2 different game systems. So I'm having to not only write plot, but stat encounters and monsters and stuff, and run the groups all at the same time, and remember which rules apply to which version of D&D, because certain groups will play the new one. Some of them won't. Some of them prefer the older D&D. Some of them prefer Pathfinder altogether, which is effectively a rewrite of 3rd edition D&D.
Is this all virtual, or you meet
normally it's in person and it's pen and paper. Obviously, at the moment that is not possible because the church is understandably closed. So we pretty much just play online exclusively at the minute. I much prefer playing, so long as it depends on the group and it depends on the DM really. If I've got a good DM and I've got a character concept that they're on board with and I can kind of play that out and it works within the party dynamic, then you're going to have one of the best role-playing experiences that you can have. But similarly, if I'm running a campaign and the players get it and they sort of bite, if you will, and go for it, then it's great. I've had some campaigns where I've either just not really prepared sufficiently or, misjudged what people are expecting out of it versus what I've intended, then it's not quite vibed very well. But at the end of the day, I'm there to have fun. If I'm running with the intention of other people having fun, and if it's not working, then it goes in the bin. It's as simple as.
And when you're playing, being the dungeon master, would you say that's a pretty ultimate fantasy as you say, role-playing experience? That's pretty much the top dollar for you D&D?
It depends what you mean, like in terms of what I'm trying to get out of it. I think it's...
I guess escapism, I guess.
Not necessarily. I mean, escapism-wise, I'd probably still go to video games because you've got more stimuli that is completely out there. You've got sound and you've got visuals. D&D, it's all in your head. Your voices are your mates' voices. The faces you're looking at are your mates' faces, and everything that defines your character that isn't spoken word is on a piece of paper. So I wouldn't say it's more immersive in that respect. There's a lot more freedom you can do because the game is not pre-programmed by someone you've never met. I'd say it's better socially because of that face-to-face component. So if you're...
Do you is this all hobby? There isn't like money involved, is there? Or is there?
Certainly not for me, no.
So will some people, because they're that good of a DM, will they charge for you can all pay a few quid a week to be part of this campaign I've designed? Or
you forget rule 35 of the internet, Nick, which is that if it exists, you can charge people money to get you to do it for them.
Understood.
So yes, I'm pretty sure. I have a friend of an acquaintance or acquaintance of a friend who does exactly that. But
for a living?
Yeah.
Wow.
But he's also allegedly the leader of a Inuit tribe in Antarctica, so whether or not that is real, I don't actually know. I've never met this person. I don't know if he's even real. He was at a friend's wedding, friend of a friend, that they haven't seen for years, because he went off to Antarctica to become the leader of this Inuit tribe. So whether or not any of this actually happened, I don't know. But, even if you just go on YouTube, there's... Critical Role, you may have heard of.
Yes, very popular.
The likes of famous voice actors such as Matt Mercer, Laura Bailey, and Sam Riegel.
I'm very familiar with Laura Bailey. I've just finished The Last of Us Part 2.
Oh, brilliant. We have topic number 6 for hour number 8.
Have you played The Last of Us Part 2?
No, not.
You played the first one?
I've played the first one. I got bored.
I knew you were going to say that.
I don't think I was bored of the game per se, but there was one bit where like the stealth mechanics I don't think were working as intended, and I couldn't actually get past it. So I just kind of went, "Yeah, the game's broken," and I haven't ever come back to it, because the problem is if you're 3-4 hours into a story-driven campaign, or not campaign, fucking game, and I check out of it for 3 or 4 years. I can't just come back to that. I've got to start it from scratch. So it's more a case of I'm going to set aside time and play it at some point. But now I know that. Now I know what happens in The Last of Us 2. I don't have any reason to. So
interesting. So you could always just watch a cinematic online to catch up with the story, and then
I've been watching Angry Joe's live stream while I've been doing D&D prep. So I'm more or less caught up. And of course, I read the leaks when they came out because. I love nothing if not memes and controversy on the internet. There's nothing quite like it. Speaking
controversy, can you... Yeah, let's go through the points then of really why you dislike The Last Jedi. Do you think it's the worst film, this worst Star Wars film then, like worse than the prequels?
Yes. There are various components that go into that, some of which it's better, most of which it's not. from a technical standpoint, it blows anything in the prequels out the water. You watch the prequels again in high definition, and I think this is one of the main problems with them now, is that they're all out on Blu-ray, so you're watching everything in 1080p. The mistakes stand out more, or the stuff that hasn't aged quite as well stands out more. Jar Jar is a feat of engineering for 1999. Doesn't look quite as good nowadays. You'll see better in the Clone Wars animated series. Where it really starts to struggle is when you get to the big battle at the end of Phantom Menace, for example, and you've got umpteen Gungans against umpteen droids, and
I'm not about to get to that bit.
They look like they're out of a PS2 game. They didn't used to look like that when you were watching it on VHS on a CRTV. It's kind of it ages even more worser when you play it on a Blu-ray. Whereas obviously the special effects and the sound design and everything from a technical standpoint in the Disney trilogy and the spin-offs has been phenomenal. You can't fault the special effects, you can't fault the production. With the exception of the war scene in Solo, that was far too fucking dark.
The war scene.
So when he joins the Imperials and goes off to the academy for a bit, and he meets Woody Harrelson.
Yeah, is that when he falls in the pit or whatever, and he meets Chewbacca?
I'm talking before that, where it says 4 years later, and he's on the battlefield in the dark, and there's an AT-ST going around or whatever.
That's right.
That in the cinema, I could not tell what the fuck was going on. But now I've got the Blu-ray, and I'm like, they've blatantly, brought the brightness up for the retail version.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Right, got you. Okay.
Just one split-second scene in a 2-hour movie, but it was enough to make me go, who the fuck greenlit that?
Yeah.
Who's watching this again? This looks right. Print.
I gotta say, mate, to your point, the production on these films are just so not. You almost want each of the films to keep all the sets just like they do in the Harry Potter studios, so people could just walk around them. Because can you imagine building such phenomenal looking locations and just having to tear it down day after day? It's such a tragedy.
Ewan McGregor said something interesting in an interview recently, because I think one of the I think he's doing an interview for something else, but the question came up about the Kenobi series, which was announced either at the start of this year or last year. And obviously that's been put on hold, A, because of coronavirus, and B, because I don't think they're quite happy with the scripts they were getting.
Oh, Christ, I want that so bad.
Well, I'd rather they delay it and get it right than rush it out and have a steaming hot pile. He was saying that the difference in terms of the technology on set makes all the difference in terms of the performance. Because back on the prequel days, I don't know if you've ever watched the behind the scenes and stuff, it's just blue screen, blue walls, blue everything everywhere, and you've got Ewan McGregor going there, what am I looking at? What am I supposed to be reacting to? Big metal thing with 4 arms, okay. And then if you watch the film, the bit where Grievous pulls out all his sabers and goes, "Attack, Kenobi," and Ewan's just stood there looking at nothing, like, I don't know what the fuck's happening. He just doesn't react to these arms flying in his face and whatever. He's just like, okay.
Yeah.
So that's A, the limits of what you can see because of the technology, but B, bad direction. Whereas the new sets, he was saying, they've got this giant canvas thing that they put around the walls, and they project the CGI backdrop onto it so the actors can see it and get a feel for what they're going to be looking at.
Wow.
But that screen in post-production functions exactly the same as a green screen.
That's good.
So they can still superimpose into the backdrop whatever they want, the way you can on a green screen, but the actors have visual cues and stuff to watch. So if they're reacting to a ship going down in the backdrop or whatever, they can see it physically come down in the room with them.
That's such a effort from a technical standpoint, just for the acting response.
It's fucking cool shit.
Impressive. Yeah.
It was like why they had Ahmed Best physically on set for Jar Jar. He had that fucking hat thing with the visor that came down over his eyes, and then he had like Jar Jar's head on his head. So they were like, talk to the head, not the man.
Oh my god!
So you were asking me whether I think the Last Jedi is worse than the prequels. The reason the Last Jedi fails in the context of what it is, if you'd taken it as a standalone film And this is one of the reasons why I'm curious to see, A, if they give Rian Johnson the trilogy they announced, and B, what it turns out as. If you took that film as a standalone film and, set it wherever in the canon, if you will, I'd probably have a lot less problems with it. A, it doesn't really work in terms of the broader context of Star Wars. The two trilogies that came out before. Now, you could argue that it's under new ownership. Those films were made for a different audience in a different time, and you should probably just disregard those. But even if you do that, it's not consistent with The Force Awakens. At all. It directly thwarts things that were set up in The Force Awakens, which were established as things you should be keeping an eye on going forwards. Doesn't work in the context of a trilogy if you then turn around in the second chapter and say, that doesn't matter. Imagine in The Two Towers, right? Frodo meets Gollum, and Gollum says, ring's not magic, it's all in your head. There's no such thing as Sauron. Gandalf lied to you.
Yeah. Gandalf's the enemy.
Yeah.
Gandalf
is Sauron.
Yeah.
It's like, why?
So one of the examples I think you might be alluding to is the development of Snoke. And while I completely disagree with killing off a villain before we even know who they are, I found that happened all the time in the prequels anyway. Who's Count Dooku? Wait, who's Darth Maul? Wait, who's General Grievous?
I get what you're saying, but it's less of a problem in the prequels because you have the underlying thread of Sidious.
Yes, agreed.
There is the big bad. The big bad is coming. You know the big bad is coming. Everything else is an accessory to this.
Kylo Ren not as much of a threat, you would say?
Kylo Ren is not a threat. You can't leave the film like that with Kylo Ren as the big bad because it doesn't work, because he's just proved to be incompetent every time he's been offered the opportunity to do anything.
Yeah.
Snoke says in the film, you were bested by a girl who'd never even held a lightsaber.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to add.
I feel that they started his trajectory. By the way, I actually think he might have one of the best story arcs from the sequel characters.
Who?
Considering the sequel characters. Who? Kylo Ren. Because he has a story arc. But I do think that they even began his trajectory wrong by making fun of him in The Force Awakens, etc., where I know he's not going to be Darth Vader, and that's the whole point of him, right? But you still want a villain, and I'm not being funny here, but General Hux might be the worst villain I've ever seen in anything, because he just shouts, and you talk about someone who's not menacing or dangerous.
The problem with the villains in that film is everyone just shouts at everyone. I can't take you seriously when you're just screaming at me like a spoiled child. You're not a legitimate threat. You're just angry. I don't even know what you're angry about. All of your problems you've created yourself. My dad's dead. Oh, wait, I killed him.
Yeah.
My mum's dead. Oh, wait, she had to die to snap some sense into me. That's my fault too. Ray doesn't want to be with me, but that's because I'm a massive prick, and that's my fault as well.
She doesn't like my high-waisted jeans, yeah.
She doesn't dig my pecs. Let the past die.
So you don't really like anything the film does, then, I assume, pretty much.
There was some stuff I thought was all right, but in the moment, the first time I watched it, I was like, oh, this could be going somewhere interesting, and then it didn't. So, the whole notion of Luke having given up on the Jedi. I thought
you found that interesting.
I thought that was going to go one of two ways. I thought it would either be the trauma of Ben's fall, or he basically looked up what the actual Jedi before the Empire were doing and said, these guys were idiots. The whole fucking Jedi code doesn't really work. And, it's time for the Jedi to end because there's a better way of doing things. But no, he's left the Jedi because he's not actually Luke Skywalker.
Yeah,
It's just
he's not.
he's some weird fan fiction's idea of what Luke Skywalker could be.
I have to say that the Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi is possibly, if anything, the opposite of the Luke Skywalker. He's not optimistic. He's not enthusiastic. We didn't even really get a proper let's see Kylo Ren burn down the academy scene, which I was thinking about washing the dishes today. I was like, that could have been the pivotal halfway point scene where we see Ben take that, what are you doing? And then we see him and the Knights of Ren take down his academy or training facility. And instead we get a couple of scenes of him in bed, waking up with Luke standing over him thinking like, what the fuck are you doing here? I haven't got any blue milk, like what?
Go milk the giraffe armadillo thing. Go squeeze his titties and drink the milk. No, Uncle Luke, I haven't got any milk.
No.
Stop milking me, Uncle Luke.
And then not only that, but when Rey finally gets there, I don't know how you felt about this, but as soon as he chucked over that lightsaber over his shoulder, I have to say my initial reaction was just like,
so
what?
So I was in the cinema, and I was like, oh, they're just going to continue straight from where the last one left. There's no time gap or anything. I was like, all right, cool. Well, that's something new. That's the kind of new and bold direction I could get behind. Was a continuous story that's told in a short space of time. But I knew at that point in the back of my mind, we're not getting a training montage. We're not getting any development of Rey, her powers and stuff. For which point I'm going, okay. I knew there was something wrong when Poe made a Yo Mama joke and was talking like telephones were a thing in Star Wars. It's like, I'll hold. I'm like, does that really make sense in the context of what I'm watching?
Yeah.
In the universe? Is that a thing? Then they made a Yo Mama joke, and I'm like, okay. When I knew the film was broken and it was never going to fix itself, was the tossing the lightsaber over the shoulder. It's like, wow.
Already?
So, wow.
It's like 10 minutes in. Right, okay.
Because the whole thing with the last shot of The Force Awakens is the look on Luke's face. There's a sense of dread in his eyes, but a renewed sense of purpose almost. He knows he's got something that he's got to do. He's not looking forward to doing it, and it involves Rey.
Yeah.
That's just completely turned on its head as soon as he throws the lightsaber away. Just completely nonchalant. Don't give a shit.
I mean, he doesn't even ask. Like, one of the first lines we ever got in the Force Awakens trailer is it Maz Moz? I can't even remember her name. He's like, who are you? And then we could have got Luke saying the same thing to Rey to start The Last Jedi. I mean, how fucking, like, who are you? You've got my lightsaber. Who the fuck are you? And
what are you doing on my lawn?
He doesn't even ask. He just fucking walks away. Like, he throws it over his shoulder. He doesn't ask who she is. Doesn't ask how she got it. Doesn't want to know why she's there. He just walks away.
Give it up.
Yeah. I've got to be honest with you, Bloor. It probably took me. I rewatched it when I got the Blu-ray, and I still thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think over the last year, I've started to dissect my concerns with it.
The reason he walks away is because he's not in touch with his emotions, Nick. He's the victim of his own toxic masculinity.
That's an interesting theory you have there.
I'm giving you the sarcasm eyes. Could you see them?
All I can see is Sidious on the windowsill, facing Mace Windu. That's a fucking joke ready to happen, isn't it?
What?
Well, Mace Windu, he's on the window when he gets killed. Right, I see.
You're doing a thing.
Anyway, and the eyes of where he's about to get killed, that's the eyes I got from you. Like the unlimited power. So you come out of The Last Jedi and you're like,
oh no, Nick, don't skip. Don't skip to the end. Okay. We ain't fucking done. Right. This steaming fucking...
I'm taking fucking babies. Okay, yeah.
So that was the point for me where I was like, oh no.
Why?
So he's like, I'm not going to train you. Why? I just said I'd never train another generation of Jedi. Okay, but why? Well, because the Jedi need to end. But why? Wanders off. Okay. Maybe they'll get to it later. So then he actually, and this is one of the bits I do like from the film, he gets into the whole, what do you sense? And she's like, life, death, nourishment, decay, and what's between it all is that balance. Yeah. And, he says something like, to say if the Jedi die, the light dies is vanity or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's this idea that the Jedi aren't the only answer, which I quite like because that kind of echoes what I was talking about earlier in terms of his learning from Return of the Jedi. The problem is that it also shits itself as soon as you go to the actual flashback. You're telling me that the guy who ignored the teachings of Yoda and Ben and took a few minutes of the Emperor's lightning to the face for the sake of saving his father would murder his nephew in his sleep because he was having a bad dream? I mean, Nick, Nick, are you telling me you've never had a dream where you just went on like a killing spree? You're just like, fuck it, I've had enough. I'm just going to butcher all these imaginary people.
I've definitely played GTA 5, so I've definitely thought about killing a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, it's like the equivalent of your uncle coming in your room, seeing you like running someone over in GTA, and going, "Can't be allowed to live. It's too dangerous."
Oh my god!
It's like, what? What the fuck, Uncle Larry? Why are you going to shoot me?
To be fair, the only other time we've seen him have a vision is when Cloud City, when everyone's in trouble, and he ignores the teachings then to go save his friends, despite it being for the better good.
Yeah, that was it. That was another lesson he learned, and then ignored.
True.
Maybe I shouldn't just blindly follow my dreams. Maybe I should wait and see what happens and try and see if they glean me any wisdom. Nope, I'm going to murder my nephew.
Okay.
I've often brought this up and people go, well, it was only a fleeting instinct and he, got the better of it. I'm like, you don't understand. He's a fucking Jedi. There's no such thing as I have a fleeting instinct and then I thought better of it. You're above that shit.
That is true.
Because the whole point is you meditate to give yourself extreme mental discipline.
Yeah. I just want to point out, I think, before we move on to the full dissection, that I'm still heartbroken that we haven't even got a Luke and Chewbacca reunion. What's happened to Han? Where's Leia? How about any concern whatsoever for basically, what's causing this huge revival of this franchise, seeing these characters again? We're getting nothing. The closest we ever get is the reunion at the end of Luke and Leia, which I personally think is like quite emotional, and it's like the closest thing we ever get.
Is it emotional because it's written competently, or because Carrie Fisher's dead?
Oh, I thought it was emotional because it was acted well. To be honest with you,
fair.
But I thought it was written okay. That moment, I
mean, I was drawn in by it in the moment, but in hindsight, I'm like, why was I feeling those emotions?
Sure.
I don't think I really cared about Leia or Luke at that point, or anyone else in the film. I was too angry.
I'm sure you already know this, Bloor, but Rey doesn't take any damage in all three films.
She does get scratched at one point.
Okay. But
she overcomes it because she's a strong, independent woman, Nick. Do you hate women, Nick? Do you hate women, Nick?
She doesn't get... I mean, look, Darth Vader gets the whole treatment, all right? He gets the whole shebang. Luke gets his hand cut off. He gets a taste of what could happen if he was his dad, right? And obviously cutting limbs off is a thing in Star Wars. Rey doesn't get anything, and I know you're going to go on to this as well. And then not only does she not get anything, she's also like, how does she even wield against Kylo Ren in the first film? He should have cut her hand off in the first film, in my opinion. That would have been fucking awesome. Like, who are you messing with here? I'm the real villain. This is the damage I can do to you. Back away now.
In the context of, if you rewind to, Force Awakens has come out and there's nothing else. I felt that film could have gotten a pass if they'd gone a different direction with the second one. And the reason I say that is that they establish in the film, and I don't know where they came up with the idea because it's not in the original trilogy at all, but they established that Chewie's bow is hardcore. Every time he fires it, whoever he's shooting goes flying across the fucking room. And you're like, okay, I didn't know it could do that, but whatever, cool. Random splashes of comic relief here and there, fine, I'm on board.
Yeah.
But then obviously,
even though Star Wars has never really been funny in history,
I disagree. I think it was just a bit more subtle. It was less slap in the face or Jar Jar standing in poo poo. It was the subtle squeamishness of 3PO combined with R2D2's implied profanity.
Yeah. Boba Fett. Fucking love that bit. Anyway,
so what was I saying? Oh yeah, Force Awakens, Rey. So Kylo has not only been shot with this bow, but he's took it like a fucking boss.
Sure.
At most, he's clutching his waist and doubled over in pain, but he has not gone flying across the room. That motherfucker took that hit. Right? He's openly bleeding in the fucking snow, having had his kidneys shot out. Okay?
Yeah.
I don't think any amount of training would necessarily make him able to overcome that at his perceived power level, if you will. I fucking hate that term because it makes it sound like a video game, but you know what I mean. His status is compromised at that point.
Yeah.
Now, that still then brings in the question of how is Rey able to put up a fight? Finn is obviously trained with melee weapons because he's a stormtrooper. So he would have used a baton at one point as an energy weapon, similar enough to a lightsaber that I'm willing to suspend my disbelief. The whole thing with Rey is initially she's sort of just kind of flinging the saber around like she don't know what she's doing. And then they lock swords and she's sort of over the precipice kind of thing. And then Kylo says something about, I can show you the ways of the Force or whatever. And she kind of goes, oh, the Force. And then she sort of shuts her eyes and meditates for a minute. You can call it meditation. But then her entire demeanour changes.
Mm-hmm.
Her entire competency, if you will, with the blade seems to increase, or, her reactions are better and stuff like that.
Her posture changes?
Stance, maybe.
Stance, okay.
And if they'd have fleshed that out in the sequel and maybe explained how that contributed to her ability to win the fight, then I'd have been on fucking board with that. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't do that. They deliberately eschewed that in favour of some one-line explanation about the dark rises and light to meet it. And that's it. That's all you get. There's nothing meaningful to that. It's a throwaway line just to kind of get yourself out of a plot inconvenience.
Yeah.
But that's all The Last Jedi is, so...
We're back on the Luke. Let's maybe go to the pink-haired...
The final thoughts on Luke, right?
Okay.
One of the first things he says is, don't be stupid. You think I'm just going to walk out there with a laser sword and face down the entire First Order? What does he do at the end of the film, Nick?
That's why he says it, though. That's a callback to the end of the film.
But he tells you it's a stupid idea.
Yeah, no.
You should feel dumb for even thinking it. But I'm going to do exactly that. It's like, if you could have faced down the First Order like you just did this entire time, why are you sitting here on a rock doing nothing, you selfish prick? Get on the next ferry back from Ireland and come fight the Empire with us.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, you were saying Admiral Pink here?
No. I just didn't know if you had any more points about Luke.
I think that's pretty much it. It doesn't really do anything in the entire film.
Yeah. Obviously, we could have a full podcast just on The Last Jedi, but the moment for me, which made me laugh out loud, and the same thing happened when I saw Batman vs Superman, and he starts rising out of the well, floating out of the well, laughed out loud.
Don't remember that.
Was when you see Leia's hand start twinkling when she's in space, and I looked to my mate and I'm like, there's no fucking way they're about to do this. There is no way I'm about to see this in a Star Wars film. But lo and behold, she floats to the spaceship after being blasted in space, and like they put her in ICU or whatever, and I'm like, did that actually just happen? In the worst way possible.
They put her in a Matrix pod.
In a Matrix.
She goes back into the Matrix to find the real Luke.
Mate.
Rather than this fake ass piece of shit on the fucking island.
That for me is genuinely the worst scene of any Star Wars film ever. Period.
I mean, I'm okay with the idea in principle, like on paper. The execution, however, I thought in the moment I was like, oh, that's gonna how they're gonna take Leia out of the thing, because Carrie had just died. Yeah, and I was like, I'm okay with that. That's pretty shocking. That's bold. That's the kind of bold shit that you could have gotten away with.
Yeah,
and I'd have been like, fuck, these people mean fucking business. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When she was kind of like moving in space, I was like, oh, okay, is that what's going to happen here? And then she floats like Mary Poppins back to the fucking spaceship. I was like, oh dear. And then what? That wasn't even enough to take me out of the film. What broke it for me was that she flew back to the bulkhead. Finn or Poe, I can't remember which, runs up to the bulkhead and opens the bulkhead so that the entire corridor is exposed to the vacuum of space.
I didn't even realise that. Is that what happens?
Yeah, she floats back into what's left of the bridge, and he runs over and opens the only door between the corridor they're in and the now vacuum bridge.
And they all live or whatever.
Yeah. When he opens the bulkhead, it like spews steam in front of the camera, and then as the steam dissipates, she's already on the hospital bed. So someone obviously realised that was stupid, and he was like, don't worry about it, we'll just cover it up with a special effect.
Okay. Maybe it would be best, because I've got so many other things to talk to you about.
Why do bombs fall in space?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, things float towards like in the direction of where they're launched.
Where were the Y-wings?
The Y-wings were on the attack with the Death Star?
No, I'm talking in the Last Jedi, Nick.
Oh.
Why have they got them stupid bombers that can be blown up by a stiff breeze, whereas they had a perfectly viable Y-wing bomber that, they would launch at Death Stars and stuff, and it would do a reasonably good job.
Yeah. Need new toy, Bloor. Need a new toy.
I need a new action figure and new Lego set.
I don't know how in tune you are with the toy side of things.
Not at all.
I'm really intrigued. I'm intrigued about it, because from the very, very limited things I hear, I have heard that these new sequels, toys aren't really selling, to be honest.
I think the Force Awakens ones did, apart from Snoke, so that's probably why he got given the axe.
Right.
He's not selling enough toys. Could you please kill him off?
We're going to have Snoke killed off.
Yeah.
Jar Jar's going to take his place.
It's like poetry, it rhymes. Do you know that meme, Nick?
No.
That's something George Lucas said. That's something George Lucas said when one of the producers on The Phantom Menace said, why does this plot almost follow Return of the Jedi for beat? So it's like poetry, they rhyme. Oh, wow.
Do you mean A New Hope or Return of the Jedi?
Return of the Jedi.
Oh, right.
Well, it almost mirrors A New Hope as well.
Yeah. Which is the cyclical trilogy
Yep.
thing. But okay, so let's get some key points out of the way for The Last Jedi then, Bloor. Hit me with them. Things that come on top of your head. Because I want to move on to The Rise of Skywalker if we can.
The Holdo maneuver.
Yeah, good point.
I don't know how you feel about it. I thought the special effect was quite pretty, but you think about it for 5 seconds, you're like, okay, well, we lost all those fighters taking out the Death Star, whereas all we needed was one fighter and a droid to fire the hyperdrive and fly it straight into the Death Star.
Yeah.
And I don't quite understand what they're getting at in The Rise of Skywalker when someone turns around and says, let's just do a holdo. And Merry from Lord of the Rings is like, nah, don't be silly. That's a 1 in a million. Is it? Is it? Because if you really think about it, the reason it works and the physics behind it make it very haphazard and kind of a catch-all.
Yeah.
The whole principle of it is things explode and go bang a lot because you hit them really, really fast. I don't think the angle matters all that much. But I'm pretty sure the only reason that it exists is because they needed to get rid of the Empire fleet for some reason. I don't know why. But they were like, we'll just have her fly into it at light speed and it'll just happen to be the right angle to take out every last fucking ship.
While the plot point of running away from the First Order mirrors that of the Rebels running away from the Empire, as soon as I saw that was going to be the opening scene, I thought, is this really the most exciting thing we can do after The Force Awakens is see some spaceships chasing some spaceships? Like, really? You don't maybe even have the Resistance attack the First Order in a kind of mirror of the start of Empire? I thought that would be a cool idea.
I think Red Letter Media called it wheel spinning the movie. And I think that pretty aptly sums it up because no one really develops in any way or accomplishes anything. They all just kind of end up right back where they started.
Yeah.
When they did the fake out with Leia, I thought they were going to kill off Finn. Oh, this is another one that annoys the living shit at me, right? The Finn sacrificing himself in the skiff thingy, right? So he's going to fly a skiff into the death laser. He's going to sacrifice himself to save all his friends. And then Rose, I want to say her name is. I can't really remember because she wasn't really in the last film for some reason. She flies into his ship, causing them both to crash in a fiery blaze in order to save his life. I don't know about you, but if you were speeding down the M1 and I thought that was dangerous, I probably wouldn't T-bone you to try and save your life. But then,
and then that mixes with the love triangle that is Finn, Rey, and Rose, I guess.
Well, the fact that she kisses him isn't really the worst offender because I saw that and I thought, yeah, they're probably not going to play that angle because Finn looked repulsed by it in the film. His facial expression is like... the part that made me realise that the writers were sniffing their own farts was when she sort of looks at him and says, this isn't about, dying for causes or something like that. It's about saving what we love as the base that all her friends are hiding in explodes in the background as a direct result of her actions.
I love how blunt these points are.
I didn't write the film. It's not my fault.
Oh god, no, I'm not. I'm enjoying your quick summaries of the.
I wish there were some good one-liners that I could kind of take away from it and go, "That's an interesting way of looking at things." Problem is that everything you're saying, you've like detrimented in the fucking background of the shot.
Yeah.
Luke trying to tell you that there's more to winning wars and beating the dark side than running out in front of the First Order swinging a lightsaber. But that's how we'll win the day. Is I'll do exactly that. Yeah, that's what I mean.
But not really because I'm a projection.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Also, why does he not have his green lightsaber?
I guess he projects his original one, doesn't
Yeah,
he?
but why?
I don't know.
Don't get me wrong, it doesn't really have any bearing on the story, but I'm just like,
I guess that shows him returning to his former self of responsibilities of being a Jedi, etc.
yeah. The other thing is that the twists in that film are kind of televised ahead of time quite broadly. And the first example is one that they mention on, again, Red Letter Media, the Snoke throne room scene.
Yeah.
Obviously he's given it the whole, I see him turning the weapon to strike true and all this shit. And while they're doing that, obviously you can see Kylo's hand turn and you can see the saber hilt revolving on Snoke's chair. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I know what's going to happen. You're spelling it out for me. What's the twist here? So I was convinced he was going to kill Rey.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then they just
too.
did with what they were telegraphing. I was like, okay. And then the whole Luke's a Mirage thing. I'm like, well, I've just seen the blue lightsaber get ripped to pieces, so I know that's not really there.
Oh, I never thought of that.
Because the part and shot of Kylo and Rey as them both reaching out for the saber and going and pulling their skank faces before it explodes.
Is that how did they get it in the last film?
What film? Force Awakens.
Did they? No, sorry, as in the Rise of Skywalker. Is it gone from then? It's just destroyed there and then?
No, they just retcon it so that she's fixed it.
Oh, right.
It's got a new brown ring around it where she's just glued it back together with Games Workshop glue.
Gorilla Glue.
Yeah, Gorilla Glue.
Okay.
Pritt stick. They're no longer called lightsabers, they're just Pritt sticks.
Interesting. Okay.
So, you know, everything it tried to do some clever things, it failed horribly, 0 out of 10, goodbye. You know, you could get into the whole thing of it being used as a vehicle for left-wing political propaganda, whatever. You know, you can put what.
Does it go that far? The the theories. Do they go that far?
I don't think they're conspiracy theories. I don't really care as much as other people do, or seem to. Ranting and raving, we've got to have this pink-haired woman in charge because, you know, men are evil. It's like, well, that might well be the intention. I don't really care what the political message is, as long as the story's good.
Yeah.
For all I know, George Lucas was promoting the Holocaust for the original trilogy. That's not what I take away from it, and I don't really care because I enjoyed the films.
Yeah, 100%. So let me give you my reaction, Bloor, of my initial reaction of The Rise of Skywalker.
Oh no, we're in trouble. The title crawl. You've alienated me with the title crawl. That's a new record.
You took the words out of my mouth, Bloor, because the first sentence, I'm thinking, what the fuck is going on here? And then it just keeps going. And then it doesn't stop until never, because it just never stops. For me, genuinely, because when I first watched The Last Jedi, I was so taken aback that I didn't really process it, and I liked a few of the things that it did. With The Rise of Skywalker, I knew within 10 seconds this was going to be the worst Star Wars film I've ever seen. And for me, it truly was, because I think that while I think most of your points are right about The Last Jedi and the problems it has, for me, trying to fix almost every single thing in a film doesn't make it a film. It makes it a spanner, and it's boring and complicated and weird and just an absolute mess. An absolute mess.
Like trying to fit 2 films worth of content into one. There were a couple of times where I thought it was almost spiteful. Like towards Rian
100%.
Johnson.
Like the quote with the lightsaber where it's, you know, or was it the lightsaber where you need to treat this with respect or whatever it was?
It's like,
yeah.
That weapon deserves more respect, Ryan. Yes, Ryan. You remember that?
But then
Luke said that, and then he looked at the camera and gave Rian Johnson the middle finger.
Jesus. But then you think, all right, fine. Maybe JJ was a solid enough and good storyteller to the point where maybe he should have developed the entire trilogy, and going off The Force Awakens, maybe that wouldn't have been a horrendous idea. But man, oh man, I don't know what you think, Bloor. I'm going to ask you now, but I thought The Rise of Skywalker was terrible. Like, truly terrible. Like, I don't think it's... I struggle to call it a film, really, to be honest.
Again, if you want to get into the technical stuff, I think we've already established that from a technical standpoint, the films are superb.
Yeah.
The plot is nonsensical. I mean, for a start, the pacing is horrendous. Fortunately, because I went to the midnight show and I was like, this might be the last Star Wars film for a few years. I've never been to a midnight showing for anything before. Let's give it a go. Why not? And the people who were meant to go with me bailed at the last minute. So I was on my own at the Riverside Odeon at fucking midnight or whatever to see The Rise of Skywalker. So I got stuck next to a mouth-breathing neckbeard in an Obi-Wan outfit. So I had to kind of... mediate my physical responses to what I was seeing on the screen.
Couldn't you just move to one of the seats your mates had? Did you not have all seats together, or was it like a
we did have seats together, but I was on the end, and the other people down the aisle were just as, should we say, unappealing in terms of proximity.
Fair enough.
So I thought, well, he's up in costume, whatever. At least he's wanting to be.
He wants to see the film.
I was like, well, that could be a laugh. So
I feel for you already, by the way.
Well, things rapidly went to pot because, as you will recall, the only explanation you will get for Palpatine's return is that the dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities, some considered to be unnatural. At which point I just laughed out loud, and the guy next to me went, "Yes."
Are you serious?
Yes. Because it's a quote, isn't it, from Revenge of the Sith?
Episode 3, yeah.
There's a certain amount of these films where people just seem to get gratification from the sensation of, I recognise that, I know what that is.
I've seen that before in episode 6.
Yeah. From what I can gather, it's worse in America because, of course, they clap in the theatre and stuff, don't they?
Mate, they're I worry about their icons because, as far as I'm aware, they're more excited about an Avengers film than who's going to be their president. Well,
I mean,
so
in the Avengers, you've got Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor to pick from, whereas in their elections, they've got a raving lunatic sentient Cheeto versus a Alzheimer riddled old man. But enough about politics. Let's go back to things that matter, like Star Wars.
Exactly.
So where are we up to? Oh yeah, the
Rise of Skywalker experience. He's just
Return of Palpatine.
He's just yelped. He's just put his fist in the air. I recognise that.
Yeah, he had a lightsaber that he was waving around, but I asked him to put it away before the film started.
What, he was waving it around?
Yeah, he was just kind of like...
Was this guy by himself?
Well, no, he had a mate with him.
Great. Were they drunk?
I don't think so. So
you just waving it around?
Alcohol. It was more of an existential intoxication.
Okay. Look, to be fair, like you said, fair play for being that passionate, I guess. But don't wave your lightsaber in my face,
So yeah, we've got the whole... And the best bit was the Snoke in a jar. This is a jam jar full of half-baked Snokes. I'm like, oh, okay. That's going to be the explanation we'll get for that as well. Okay.
To be fair, Bloor, you've missed out on a cool intro scene where we see Kylo proper slashing on Mustafar, which is pretty cool.
I mean... Yeah, except there's nothing there to tell you that it's Mustafar.
True that. And also...
Visual dictionary.
I do like I can't remember what the planet's called, where he's about to meet the Emperor and it's really low and you can just see the lightning strikes. I think that's cool. Yeah. Anyway, I'll let you know. My boy.
My boy.
It's fucking cool, man. I hate the film, but his audio, his voice.
You have ever heard inside your head.
So cool. Anyway, so you saw Snoke in a jar. You read The Crawl, by the way. So
yeah, I don't really understand The Crawl. I didn't know that raging was a verb. Kylo Ren rages across the galaxy looking for the Emperor. So rage is a verb?
Mate, I don't know English well, but I don't think it is.
By the end of a title crawl for a Star Wars film, I should be excited for the opening scene, not querying the grammar. The grammar should be my primary concern going into the film.
Yeah.
So what the fuck happens after that? Oh yeah, we're greeted by...
So he meets the Emperor. He's all jacked up on the electronics, fucking steroids. I mean, again, I think his voice is cool. He looks cool. But the whole time you're just thinking, what?
How? Why? There's a lot more of how and why coming up next, spoiler alert, but we'll save it for the end, because I have one question for you that no one's been able to answer, which breaks the film for me, so...
For me?
Well, for me, it certainly does. It might do the same for you.
I mean, the film's already broken for me, but yeah, do you want to... Shall we carry on, or do you want to...
coffin, then. Now, I'm on a roll now. We're going to finish The Rise of Skywalker before I let you urinate.
Do it.
So, where do we go from there? They're on Exegol. Does it then... It cuts to Rey, doesn't it? And she's like...
Yeah, she's doing the old feel me or whatever the fuck it is.
No explanation, no training, no kind of, this is how I've learned to do this. This is my development as a character. No, now she can fucking float. She can just flat out levitate. And she's trying to channel the Jedi of old.
For those listening, James is looking at the camera.
Yes, with eyebrows raised. For all three of you listening.
Let's not demean that. This is going to be red letter type media, you know what I'm saying?
Maybe we shall see.
Maybe I'm dissing red letter media.
I could be the guest that breaks you wide open, Nick, and the subs just come flooding in.
That's true. That is true.
It's a blessing and a curse, though, because if that happens, yes, you'll have fame and fortune, but you will owe it all to me.
My boy. Anyway, right.
I'll give you a new empire.
The final order.
Yeah. So this particular scene, I think they've clarified in some other book, which I shouldn't really have to buy to understand the film. But when it first came out, there were two interpretations of it, which was that either there's been lots of people on this secret planet that no one can get to for some time. How they got there, I think, is questionable, given that no one's meant to be able to get there. That's the entire shtick of the planet. And they've been building ships for the last 30 years to the point where there's now 100,000 Star Destroyers.
Each with the capability of a Death Star.
Well, I mean, at that point, if Palpatine can come back from the dead with no explanation, then where the Star Destroyers come from is secondary, but other people seem to think that he conjured them.
Out of his belly?
Well, it's because he says, the dark side is a pathway to blah, blah, blah. And then he goes, I'll give you a new empire. And he sort of raises his hands like he's doing some sort of incantation. And then these ships just erupt out of the ice for no reason. Now, I don't for a minute think that was the intention, but the film is so poorly orchestrated and written that is how people have legitimately interpreted it.
Yeah.
And looking at it, I can see why. So.
You're loving it. You are loving it.
It's exhausting.
Should we hit the highlights perhaps? Because this, I'm not being funny, Bloor. We could be here for hours.
You mean you don't want to go through scene by scene because each scene is as problematic as the next in terms of internal consistency?
I was going to say, it does coherency. Can you even say coherency and Rise of Skywalker in the same sentence?
Yeah. Well, do you remember in Revenge of the Sith, there's like one shot where Palpatine's fighting Windu and the others? There's like one shot where he kind of takes a saber and goes and like does a forward stab. And
Yeah, Kit Fisto.
it looks a bit weird because obviously Ian McDiarmid is not a stunt actor. He's a middle-aged to old man at that point. In The Force Awakens, Rey does a similar kind of, blind stab because she's meant to be untrained and not got any proficiency, etc. At the time, when that first came out, people were immediately drawing comparisons and saying she's a Palpatine on that basis and that basis alone.
Right. I saw the YouTube video out before the film, which literally says, is Rey Palpatine's granddaughter, or whatever the fuck it is.
So I'm guessing J.J. Abrams saw one of those videos and was like, well, I can't think of anything better, we'll do that. Just don't get me wrong. On paper, again, don't have a problem with that. The problem is it lies in the execution and the deliberate obfuscation of that eventuality in previous films.
For you, James, what would be a good origin for Rey? A satisfying, fulfilling origin for Rey?
At this point, 3 films in, I don't think there would have been one because she was poorly written, underdeveloped, and wholly unlikable as a character.
Interesting.
And by that I mean she's just rude and dismissive to anyone she disagrees with.
Is she?
For the most part, yeah.
Okay. I think she's quite friendly. She's like, oh, hey, Finn, how's it going?
Stop grabbing my hand.
Oh, yeah, but that's the joke, innit? The joke is like, I'm a powerful female, you don't need to keep worrying about me. It's not a joke.
To the people who write it, Nick. It's not meant as a joke. It's a joke to me and you. It's a meme because it's so, jarring.
Yeah. Do you think that was meant seriously?
From your lives, from an aerial bombardment, and all you can think about is, the patriarchy.
I'm not sure they wrote that seriously. I got to be honest with you. There's no way. Come on.
I think you're being naive.
Maybe so.
But then again, you've spent the last however many years at university being surrounded with that kind of nonsense. So
very true.
I'm sorry, I'm making assumptions, but probably surrounded by them.
You think? I mean,